Now, before we go any further, I have mentioned the word academics many times, and it's quite interesting to look at what is the meaning of academic. Now, many academics teaching at the university are very comfortable with the idea of once you have a doctor or you have a lecturer at the end or the beginning of your name, and then you are an academic. Actually, that is not so. A person with a PhD is simply to me just a lab worker or a kind of a researcher, but not an academic in the true sense. And a person with a master's or with an experience is simply someone who is like a teacher in the sense of imparting knowledge and information as well as experience. But an academic is a different person altogether. It is the same as the word a scholar. An academic is not a real academic, first of all, if he or she cannot relate a particular problem to the bigger societal concerns. Now, I've noticed many of my academic colleagues can only talk about their specific fields very well. But when we are looking at the bigger picture of things, then they are lost. Unfortunately, when I examine PhD students, this is the question of what I call the big picture question, which they fail to understand or fail even to answer. Why? Because their supervisors have never actually led them to the idea of what I call the bigger picture in society. They went straight to the gap of knowledge and then what I call plugging holes without knowing what the wall is for. Yeah, I've always said that if there are holes in the wall, it could be a window. And why are you plugging this hole? So the failure to understand the bigger picture. Secondly, an academic is not a real academic if he or she cannot dumb down their research concerns into something intelligible to the masses. Now, I have actually confronted or discussed this issue with a very senior academic, and now she's actually one of the very high-ranking officers in the Ministry of Higher Education. And I said that it is very important in democracy that academics engage with the people because the people are the stakeholders of this nation, and it's our responsibility to do that. Well, the academic said to me, "Oh, Prof, the people they cannot understand what we are doing. They have not the capacity to understand actually what we are actually researching and all that." Now, I think this is completely wrong because as an academic, if you are a real academic, you're supposed to be able to explain whether it's quantum physics or the aesthetic or postmodern architecture to a layperson because that's why you are called a professor. You can profess things in various mode. We could look at the idea of writing books for children and for the masses. We look at Michio Kaku, we look at Carl Sagan, we look at Stephen Hawking, writing books in order to explain the very complex theory of time, of the cosmos, and of the universe to lay people. Because in a democracy, the lay people then gets to be the policymakers. Now, I said also in a cynical manner, I said that if the Prime Minister was interested to give funding for your research, I'm sure you can actually explain things to him. And the Prime Minister is not an academic. Okay? Uh, so an academic cannot reach the stature of a scholar if he or she sticks only to his or her field and not use the intelligence to branch out to other knowledge base and areas. This is a third aspect. Now, if you're researching solar energy and then you just die with solar energy, that's not the real academic. It's supposed to be able to cross into other fields, and then whether you bring the particular field together, or in fact create new directions and new ideas and new fields of knowledge. Uh, those are the two things that is supposed to be done by a real academic crossing into new territories, because we are not there for one lifetime only to do research on one particular area. Now, in my case, I started with the idea of mosque architecture and branching out into housing. and looking at community interaction, Muslim, non-Muslim, and then going into society, social policy making about education, and now I'm talking about extremism in Islam, and how then it would affect the idea of designing of the mosque, what I call contextualism in mosque architecture. So we have to cross fields and create the bigger picture for us, and also to uh, make it more meaningful. Now, the real academic is a visionary uh, of society, not a worker in a lab specifically. And I think this is the thing, or the idea, or the model, or the persona of the academic that I wish to impart.